Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nader. In this video, we're going to go over a bunch of exercises to get more practice with sets in JavaScript. Let's just get right into it. Okay, so as with the other exercise videos, I've created a bunch of comments at the start of each of these files. In this video, we have a warm-up exercise as well as 3 exercises. I'll read out the actual instructions at the start of each of these exercises, kind of give a bit of preamble to each of them, and then give you a chance to pause the video and try it out yourself before we go through the solution together. All right, so for the warm-up exercise, I'd like you to create a variable called numbers that points to a new set. Then I want you to add the numbers, these numbers to the numbers set, and do this each with a separate line using the method that we would use to add things to a set in JavaScript. Finally, you want to print out numbers, which is the set, to the console and to make a note of what's actually inside of it. And try to ask yourself, how does this differ from if we were to do this exercise with just a basic array in JavaScript? And in fact, I would go as far as actually doing the same thing with an array using push on an array and actually comparing the differences between them. All right, so give that a shot and then we'll go through the answer together. Sweet. So to start, let's create a variable called numbers. So we'll say const numbers, and this is going to be a new set. So we saw in the set video, as well as the map video, that we have to use this new keyword, which calls a constructor function for these set objects or set classes. So, slightly different from how we create objects and arrays, because objects, if you recall, are like this, and arrays are like this. So just a little bit of an extra tidbit that we have to do there for sets. Now we want to add all of these numbers here that I have listed to the set. Sets had a whole bunch of different methods on them, but luckily they were named pretty aptly. The add method on a set instance allows us to actually add things to the set. In this case, they're all numbers, so let's just go ahead and start adding them. So I'm going to do add. I have a bunch of these. Let me just kind of duplicate this line a few times. I want to add 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I want to add 5, 2, and I want to add 4. Right? So this is how we would add all these numbers I have listed here, one at a time to the set, each on separate lines. Now there's other ways that we could do this kind of more efficiently. Maybe if we had a list of these numbers or an array, we could kind of add them in a loop. But I just want to get some practice with this just so we can see how it works. Then I want to print out numbers. So I'll do console.log and I'll print out numbers, which is our set. I'll just print out bring up our terminal, and I'm going to run, make sure I'm in the correct folder first. Yep, and I'm going to run node and then the warm-up exercise. And it looks like we have this as our result. So interestingly, we have 5 items in our set, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is happening here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We added 2 and 4 to the set. However, sets only allow unique values, right? And since we already had 2 and 4 in the set, these effectively get ignored. So we still only have 5 items at the end of this. Perfect. So that's the main difference between sets and arrays. There are a few other kind of optimization differences between them that make sets very useful. But to kind of just end off the warm-up, I just want to do the same thing but with an array. So I'm going to say const numbers array, and I'm just going to say kind of like this, right? So I'll just have this numbers array. So if I console.log out this array, you can see that we actually have the duplicates in this array, which are the, the 2, 3, and 4. Right? I actually forgot to add the 3 here. I just realized that. So technically speaking, we had to add a 2, 3, and 4 just like that. So if I was to rerun this, this is technically our output. The set doesn't change because 3 is already a duplicate. However, this array has those 3 extra numbers in it as a duplicate, right? So if we, for example, used a loop or some other construct where we're adding numbers to these collections, a set would automatically filter out the duplicates, and array would allow the duplicates to be added in the order that we add them in, and it would be our job to filter those out later if that's what we wanted to do. So a very useful feature for sets right there. Let's go to exercise 1. Okay, so for this one, we want to create an array called points with these values in it. And this is an array of numbers that we want to figure out how we can print out all the unique points inside of points. So we don't want to print out duplicates. So for example, we only want to print out 10, then 20. We want to skip 10 here because that's a duplicate, then 30, etc. all the way to the end. I'll give you a moment to try that out. The hint is to use sets, and then we'll go through the answer together. Okay, so I'm going to create an array. I'll say const points, and I'm just going to copy this so I don't have to type it out here. And that's our array of numbers. All right, so I'm going to do this in 2 ways, and you can see that one is like a cheating way, but totally valid, and the other is kind of the longer form way. So if I was to create a new set to actually store the unique values in points, it would kind of look something like this. We need a set first to store these values in. So I'm going to say const unique points, and this is going to be a new set, just like that, just like we had in the warm-up. And I can do a loop, right? So I can loop through points, and for each point inside of points, I'm just going to add it to the set. And then the set is automatically going to figure out for me if it's a duplicate, just like we had before, right? So that would look something like this. I'll say for let I equal 0, I is less than points dot length, I plus plus. We did this in the array videos and the loops videos. So if you need a bit of a refresher on that, definitely check those videos out for some help. And what we want to do is we want to do unique points dot add the points at the index I that we're looking at. Right, so we're going to add 10, 20, 10, 30, 15, 15, 35, 60, 10. So let's log out our points, unique points, which is our set. We want to log out the set, and we want to see kind of what we have in there. So if I do node and I say exercise 1, you can see that we have our set right here, and it has all of the unique values inside of it. All right, perfect. So I kind of didn't specify in this one how to actually get these printed out. In this case, I would accept this answer as kind of the kind of unique values inside of the set to just be printed out as a set like this. To actually loop through this set and print out the values in the set, we need a special type of loop, which we're going to look at in the next set of videos, which is called the for of loop. So if you haven't got into those yet or seen those in JavaScript before, don't worry about it. This is totally fine to actually get this solution down. However, I do want to show you something interesting. We can actually shorten this code quite dramatically by that cheat that I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to create another set here. I'm going to say const cheat unique points. And I say cheat, but this is actually a totally valid way to do it. I just wanted to kind of show you a different way to accomplish this if you ever have to do this yourself in your projects. So I can do new set here. And it turns out the set constructor function, we can actually give it an argument, and this argument is anything that's an iterable. We haven't gone through this yet. We're going to go through that in the next video, as I mentioned, about for of loops. However, an array is a type of iterable. Okay, that for this exercise, that's all we really need to know, which means that we can actually pass in points to the set constructor function, and the set will kind of loop through it and add them all to the set inside of it automatically, very similar to what we did right here. Okay, so it's going to basically construct this set with these initializer values, which is this array, and kind of cheat unique points will be that set. So just to prove that to you, I'll console log out cheat unique points just so we can see what that looks like. And you can see here that I actually get the exact same set, right? So this second printout is cheat unique points, and the first printout is just unique points. So that's pretty cool, right? We can give the set constructor an array, for example, or any iterable, and it will kind of just tag along all these values one at a time and create that set for us so we don't have to manually do it. Perfect. Let's go to the second exercise. Now, we want to create an array called numbers with the following values, very similar to the previous exercise. So 10, 20, 15, 30, 15, 20, 35, 60, and 10. What we want to do though in this one is we want to find the first duplicate value in numbers and print it out to the terminal. Okay, so for this exercise, the tricky thing is trying to figure out how we can know if we've seen a duplicate value before. Okay, so what that means in practice is that we have to kind of keep track of values as we're looping through this array to check to see if we've seen that value before. Okay, so that basically means we need a set, and as we're looping through this set, as I have in the hint here, as we're for looping over this array, we're adding numbers to a set, and we can figure out if we've seen a number before inside the for loop by asking if the set has that item inside of it. Okay, so that's just a hint for this. Before I let you go, I just want to mention this is quite challenging. Okay, there's a lot of kind of interview questions that are actually exactly this question or something kind of a derivative of this question, so something very similar or some tweak on this kind of question. And using a set is probably the most optimal solution, and it will make your life much easier when you're trying to answer questions like that in an interview setting. There are ways to solve this problem without a set. However, they take much longer, and in a lot of settings would take so long that they would actually not be a valid solution. Okay, if you can imagine an array that has millions of items inside of it, for example, that would probably be a not optimal solution if we use things that didn't use something like a set or a map. All right, so let's try that out, and once you give it a shot, even if you get stuck, don't worry, unpause the video and we'll give it a shot together. Perfect, so let's go ahead and do this one. So we'll say const numbers is equal to this array right here. And then we want to find the first duplicate, right? So let's kind of, the most important thing here is to kind of think about the logic for this, right? So before I even just get into the code, as we start to get more familiar with JavaScript and look at more complicated problems, now we're getting to kind of a point where it's not really enough just to rely on kind of our instincts and the code and syntax that we know. The best way to solve these problems is really just to walk through it as like a human being, right? So let's do that. I'm going to look at this array, right, as a human with my eyes, and I'm going to say, okay, I see the number 10, right? Great. So now I'm going to, in my brain, store this number 10 and be like, oh yes, I remember I saw the number 10. Okay, or we can write it down, or however you best remember things. Then we're going to look at the next item, which is 20. And I see that this is 20, and I'm going to check my brain at, no, I haven't seen 20 before, so we can continue. Check 15 next. 15, have I seen 15 before? No, I saw 10 and 20. We're totally good. We can keep going. I'm going to store 15 that I've seen it before. Same thing with 30. Have I seen 30? Nope, only seen 10, 20, 15, and 30. I'm going to store 30 in my memory. Now I'm going to check 15. I'm going to say, have I seen 15 before? And then I'm going to check my brain, and I'm going to be like, oh, yes, actually I have, right? I did see 15 before. I just saw it a couple back, for example, right? So this must be a duplicate, right? And this is the first duplicate. And I know that because I've been checking to see if I saw a duplicate every single step of the way, right? So I can confidently say that since I was kind of storing in my brain these numbers as I kind of looped through and saw each of these items come up, I can say that 15 is the first one that I saw that I know I saw before, right? So that is how you would kind of do a kind of logical, a high-level solution to this problem. So we need to write that in code, obviously, which is totally different, but actually the logic is the same. So what do we need? We need to look at each item. And we know how to do that because we have a for loop, right? We can use a for loop and we can loop through each item. We need a way to check to see if we've seen an item before. And this is where the set comes in. As we're going through each item, just like I said that I was going to store it in my brain, we're going to store it in the set. The set is going to be our so-called brain for this problem, right? So we can constantly ask the set, hey, did we see this number before? Yes or no? Did we see it before? Did we see it before? Did we see? Oh, we saw it before. It must be a duplicate, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to call that seen numbers. Okay, and this is going to be a new set. Now, a lot of the time you won't know you need this right away. You'll maybe start writing the loop and then you'll have to come back and realize you need this set or some other structure to keep track of things, and that's totally fine. Okay, next I'm going to create a loop. I'm going to say for I equals 0, I is less than the numbers dot length and I plus plus. We're going to loop through this one at a time. So I'm going to look at each item and I'm going to check to see if the set has that item, right? So I'm just going to add some pseudocode here. This is our brain storage, right? Just keep with my analogy. This is looking at each item. Then we want to say, did we see this before, right? So that's our question. We want to check the brain, or our storage in this case. So let's do that. If our seen numbers dot has, and that's the function for sets that allows us to query it to see if it has the value that we're interested in. So what value are we interested in? We're not interested in I because that's the index and it's just starting at 0, going to 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to ask for the numbers at that index. So 10, 20, 15, 30, 15, etc. So if we have seen it, then that means that that's the first duplicate value that we've seen. So then we can console.log out that value, right? This number is at I, and then we can break out of our loop because we found it. We don't need to keep checking. Okay, so I'll annotate this as we found the first duplicate. Okay. And now we have to figure out, well, what if we haven't seen this number before? What do we do? Well, if you remember the analogy that we went through earlier, I said, well, we need to store it in our brain, right? We need to store it in seen numbers. So if we have not seen it, we need to store it in our brain, in our storage. So I'm going to say seen numbers dot add our numbers at this index. All right. So the way that this is working is we're looping through each item inside of this numbers array. Every single loop, we're saying, hey, did we see this number before? If we haven't, then we add it to our seen numbers set, and then we just keep going through this loop again until we find a number that we have seen, in which case we log it out, right? Because that's the first duplicate, and then we can break out of the loop. We don't have to continue searching for other numbers. Okay, so let me run this code and see what we get. So I'm going to run exercise 2, and it looks like we get the correct answer, right? We get 15, which is the first duplicate in this array, which is at this spot right here, because we saw it at index 2. Okay, just to show you what happens, if I get rid of this break and I run this code, you will see that we actually continue to find the other duplicates inside of the array, which is also totally fine, right? This example asks for only the first duplicate, so I kind of just stopped searching after we found it by using the break keyword so that we could break out of the loop. Okay, if this was millions of items long, that might save us some time. Perfect. So definitely a tricky one. I would not expect someone to get this right away. Like I mentioned, it's definitely a more challenging interview question for kind of a starting position. So take your time to read through this code. There are other ways to kind of go about this code, but I think this is probably the simplest solution that you could come up with. That might be a little bit verbose, but that's totally okay. It's very clear what's happening here, and if you were to explain it to someone just like I explained it to you just now, it should come across as pretty explanatory. All right, so let's go to the final exercise for this video. There's a lot of stuff here, so I'll just go through this one at a time, and I'll give you a chance to do it yourself. So we want to create an array called items with these values inside of it. These are objects. In this case, there are 4 objects, right? Each of them has a name, quantity, and price. The name is a string, the quantity is a number, and the price is a number. What you'll notice is that there's banana, apple, banana, and candy. Okay, so we have 2 banana objects, 1 apple, and 1 candy object, each with their own quantity and price. Then we want to create a second array called results that is empty to start. We also want to create an empty set called duplicates. Now where things get interesting is we want to add all of the objects inside of our items array in order to our results array, right? But we only want to add items if they are not a duplicate of something we've seen before using the name property. So that is a little bit confusing. So let me kind of go through this like visually, just so it makes a bit more sense. If we were to come across this object in a loop, we have not added a banana to our results array yet, right? So we can add this object to our results array. So that can get pushed on. Then we go to apple. We have seen, we have not seen apple in our kind of traversal of this loop so far. We've only seen banana, so that we can add apple to our results array as well. Now we have banana and apple objects, these 2 objects, inside of our results array. Then we come to banana. Banana, we already added to results, right? Because we're using the name property to determine things that are duplicates. So we are going to skip this object. We are not going to add it to the results array. Finally, we see the candy object. We have not seen candy before, so we're going to add it to results. And when we finally print out the results array, it's going to look like what I have down here in step 5, which is banana, apple, and candy. And most importantly, it's the banana that has the price of 1.95, which is the first banana right here, not the second banana that was skipped over. So the hint for this one, very similar to the last example, is to use a set to keep track of duplicates. I'll leave it to you to how to do that. I would just say that probably the name is all you really need, but give that a shot and then we'll go through it together. Okay, so once you've given that a chance, let's create our items array. So this is going to be an array. I'm just going to dump these in here by copy and paste. And I'm going to, oops, I guess I could have done this in a slightly faster way. Apologies for you having to wait for me. Comma, comma, comma. There we go. So this is our items array, right? We want to create a results array, and we're going to start it as empty. And we also want to create a duplicates set, which is an empty set to start, just like that. So now everything is set up, right? Now we're going to go to step 4, which is we want to do that loop, and we want to loop through everything inside of items and add it to results only if we haven't seen that item's name before. So let's figure this out. For let I equal 0, I is less than items dot length, I plus plus. Let's do the loop. So what do we want to do? Very similar to the last exercise, we want to ask the question, does duplicates have this name in it before? Have we added this before? Because as we go along, we're going to be adding these names to duplicates. Technically, if you added the entire object to the duplicates list, this would not work as intended because the objects are different objects. So we're actually going to use just the name to keep track of things inside of the set. All right, So let's see how this works. We're going to say if the duplicates set has our items at I, so items at I is going to be each object one at a time, and we're going to ask for that name. We're just going to look for the name. If it has the name in it, then this is a duplicate, and we can skip this iteration of the loop. We can just continue and skip it. So the key word for that is continue, and we went over that in the exercises and kind of videos for while loops and for for loops. So if you need some refresher, definitely check those videos out. So that takes care of the case where we see a duplicate. We can effectively just skip it like this. What if it's not a duplicate? What if this is the first time we are seeing this item? Well, then we want to do two things. We want to add it to the set with its name so that we can see if we see it again in the future and skip over it. We also want to add it to results, right? So we want to say results.push items at I, right? So we want to push the object onto results because this is the first time that we're seeing this named object, okay? But we can't forget to also add that name to the set so that we eventually can skip over it by checking this condition. So we want to say duplicates.add, right? And we want to add the name of the item that we're looking at, very similar to what we had over here. So we're going to say items at I.name, just like that. Okay, so this happens first, and then this happens only if this does not happen. I'm going to show you kind of what happens in certain cases if we were to comment out some of these lines, just so it's extra clear what's happening here. I'm going to run node exercise 3, and I just realized I didn't print anything out, so I want to console.log out my results, which is what we're interested in, and we want to see this array right here. Okay, so let's see if I did this correctly, and I didn't do this correctly. So this is actually a good opportunity for me to show that, these errors happen all the time. In fact, they even happen to be. Let's actually just try to debug this because I'm pretty sure it's a small little thing. You might have caught it as we were coding together. So it looks like we actually added everything for some reason, including the second banana, which is not what we wanted to add. So let's see why this might be. Let's kind of walk through the code. So I have this array list. I have my set. I'm saying go through each one. That looks right. Items.length. Then I'm asking the question if duplicates, which is our set, has items at I. Oh, I think I see it already. Dot name. Let me know if you take if you're looking at this and you kind of spot the little bug that I have on here. This is actually really common. As you can see, a little bit of a nefarious little bug here with the placement of my period. So if you caught it, this dot name actually has to happen inside of here, because what I was doing before was I was asking kind of the wrong question. I'm going to ask items at I, which is going to be one of these objects, and then I'm going to grab the dot name property off of that object and ask for its value. So that's what the dot name is. It's saying go find the name key and give me its value, which in this case is, say, banana, for example, right? So items at I dot name is the thing that we are asking to see if this set has in it, because that's what we were adding to the set. If I had the dot name outside like this, this is not working in kind of a slightly confusing way, because we're actually asking to see if the set has just items at I, which it doesn't, because we never added these objects to the set. We're only adding the names to the set. Okay, and then this dot name after the fact, it does something a little bit weird, which is not kind of a bit out of the scope of this video, but it's asking for a property on whatever is being returned by this evaluation. So in this case, we just want the .name to be inside, just like that. And I'm fairly certain that if I run this now, we should get the correct results. Fingers crossed, and I run it, and look at that. We have our banana, apple, and candy. As you can see, definitely quite tricky, right? Even small placements and misplacements of things can cause bugs. Happens to everyone, happens all the time. I'm actually glad that happened to me. I'll leave that in the video so you can see that this happens to everybody. But that would be one possible solution to this problem. There are other ways to solve this problem. However, I would probably say this is one of the more simple ones given the exact way that this question was phrased. So that said, in the next video, what we're going to do is go over the hinted for of loop that I've been mentioning 100 times so far. That's going to allow us to loop over things like sets and maps, and even things like arrays and object keys and values and some other things in a slightly more compact and neat syntax than this for loop that we've been seeing so far. It does have its use cases, and this for loop with the index also has its own use cases. So having these two types of loops, now that we've seen all these data structures together, is definitely useful, so we can choose which one to use in the correct scenario. So if you liked this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. As well, I'd love to hear in the comments kind of how these exercises went for you. Were they easy? Were they hard? Were they useful? And kind of any errors that you came up with. For example, very similar to the errors that you saw kind of me work through. Sometimes they're very hard to spot. So if you get stuck, definitely post it in the comments and let me know, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. It also helps other people who might have come across this same error. So that said, I'll see you in the for of loop video. See you later.